Hello and welcome to Coffee Break Harp. My name is Zuzanna, I am a harpist and a harp teacher, and today I will show you how to tune your harp. First of all, congratulations on getting your instrument. You must be so excited. To make the most of your new harp, tuning is really essential, especially if your harp is brand new, but really all instruments, whether they are second-hand or new, bought or hired, they are the happiest when they are tuned regularly. Even if you haven't had any lessons yet, or maybe you're not even be the one going to play the harp anytime soon, but you're tuning it for your child maybe, you will soon get used to it. So start as soon as you can and do a little bit every day, as it does require some practice, and the more you do it, the easier it will become. To get started, you will need a few things. Apart from the harp, get ready a tuning key. This usually comes with the harp, but if it doesn't, get in touch with the manufacturer and ask them to send you one that will match your harp. You will also need a tuning app on your phone or a tuner. You can download a tuning app on your phone or tablet. Some of them are paid and some of them are free. On my iPhone, I've got installed a free app called InStuner and it works perfectly fine. You can also buy a tuner, which is a small battery-powered device. Since there are different types of tuners and some of them are designed for instruments other than the harp, you want to make sure that you get a chromatic tuner. Mine is a Korg, which is a popular brand for these. You will also need to know how to tune your harp, and this will depend on what type of harp do you have. So you may want to check with your harp manufacturer or your teacher in which key should your harp be tuned. While for many harps this is rather straightforward, some types of harps can be tuned in a few different ways, so you may want to check just to be sure. In the description of this video you will find a link to a free PDF which will include some advice on how to determine the key in which you will need to tune your harp. So make sure to follow the link to download your tuning cheat sheet. In this video I will demonstrate how tuning works for a few different types of harps. We will have a non-lever harp tuned in C, followed by a lever harp, and then finally a pedal harp. I will start by showing you some of the steps that will stay the same for all these harps, and then we will move on into looking into some details that are very instrument specific. With all types of harps, we will start by placing the tuner, or the phone with the app, on the music stand close to the harp, so you can see the screen clearly. The default setup of most devices is 440 Hz, and when you switch them on, this is what they will be usually set up to. With free versions of some apps, you don't have the option to change it, which means that you don't have to worry about it at all. If you're using a tuner, which does have this option, and you accidentally move it up or down, you can use the calibration buttons to bring it back to 440. For now, I will use our first harp, the 20-string Adventurer, which we will be tuning in the key of C major. You've turned on your tuner and you've got your tuning key ready, so now let's pick a string to start with. I usually start with one of the Cs, meaning one of the red strings, somewhere around the middle of the harp. Although it doesn't matter too much which string you start from, I usually start somewhere in the middle and first go through the lower strings and then go back up from where I started to the top. This means that later, when I'm checking how the strings sound, I can use this middle range as a reference point. Now that I've picked that string, I will attach my tuning key on the tuning peg on the other side of the harp, which belongs to this string. This is a very important step, and at the beginning you want to frequently check that your tuning key is attached to the peg that belongs to the string you're intending to tune. With a smaller harp like this one, I can quite easily see from above that this is indeed the peg for this red string. If you'd like to see a trick that I use to quickly check without looking that I'm on the right string, stay with me until the end of this video, where I'll share with you a few more tips about tuning. After you've double-checked where your tuning key is, you hold it with your right hand and use the index finger of the left hand to pluck the string you want to tune, in your case, the red string for the high C. After I plug the string, I will watch what happens on the screen to determine whether I need to move the key, and if so, which way. It helps to know what you're expecting to see, and in case of this harp and this string, I will want to see on my screen a letter C, as we're tuning a red C string, without any extra symbols. Let's check if that will be the case. Yes, we've got the C. What's displayed can change rather quickly, so when I tune a string, I usually pluck it at least a few times, in between checking what's happening on the display. So, the first thing you always want to check when plucking a string is what letter is displayed on the screen and whether it matches what you expected. For this harp and most other instruments, when plucking red strings, you will see the letter C without any symbols. But this will be different for pedal harps, so if you're tuning one right now, stay with me until the later part of this video. Now that we've got the C and we made sure it's just the letter without any extra sharps or flats, we will watch the color of the lights on the screen and the position of the arrows on the display. In case of this C, we can see that the arrow of the tuner is pointing slightly to the left and that we've got the left light flashing, and also that the screen of the up is now yellowish with the display bar on the left. In case of this up, you will also see that it tells you to tune up. When the arrow moves to the left, this means that the string that you're tuning is flat, meaning it is too low, and therefore it requires tuning up. To do this, you will need to tighten the string by turning your tuning key this way. With your thumb on this tuning key, you will need to turn your thumb away from you to tighten the string on the peg. Now, this is really important and I want you to hear me on this one before you start turning your key. These are all extremely small movements. I recently heard someone comparing it to a thickness of a hair, and yes, in some cases you may want to turn your tuning key just by maybe 3 or 4 hairs at a time. When you look at the display of the phone and the tuner, you will notice that it is gradually moving from left to right, even though it may seem like I'm not moving my hand at all. But I am turning the key, just doing really tiny movements. Now the up goes green, a little more to go on the tuner, and now the arrow has also arrived. Turning the tuning key too much is a very common mistake at the beginning, but if you check your screen frequently, you should spot it soon enough. So keep holding your right hand on the tuning key and your left hand on the string. Every time you move the key, even a tiny bit, pluck the string again and check how the display has changed. If you've been turning the key and nothing has changed on the display, check if your tuning key is on the peg belonging to the string that you're tuning. This is another common mistake. We think we're turning the key for the string that we're plucking, but our key is attached to a different peg and we're changing the position of a different note, but we can't hear it because we're still plucking that other string. So, at the beginning, make sure to check frequently whether your tuning key is on the right tuning peg. Back to our C. Now, the display of the up turns to green, and in case of the tuner, we've got the middle light coming up in green. The arrow also stays mostly in the middle, which means that our string is now in tune, and that we're fine to move to the next string. Sometimes with some more sensitive devices, you will see the arrow moving a bit from side to side. However, what you're looking at is the general tendency. So, if the arrow tends to stay in the middle, then you're most likely fine. As you can see, the display of the up stayed in green, while the arrow on the tuner moved a bit from left to right. They are both accurate, but the tuner shows you just a little bit extra information, which I admit that at the beginning it may be a little bit confusing. If that happens, remember that with some devices the lights or the arrows may move a little bit more around, but what you're looking for is where they tend to stick around most. If in doubt, pluck your string a few more times before you decide what to do. Because I often need to pluck each string several times when tuning, what I usually do is place my thumb 1 or 2 strings above. By doing this, I help my second finger stay more or less in the same spot to keep plucking the same string. This means that I don't need to look at the string that much and I can focus on what's happening on the screen or on the tuning peg. Now that we've tuned our middle C, we're going to move on to tuning the next string down, the B. And here's where instructions for different types of harps will begin to differ. If you're tuning an instrument with no levers, like this harp here in the key of C major, stay with me as that's what we will do next. If your harp has any levers or pedals, we will go through the instructions for this type of harps in a moment. For a handy cheat sheet on how to tune each type of harp, follow the link in the description of this video where you can download a free PDF guide showing you what to do when tuning different instruments. Let's move on to the next string down on our adventurer harp. If you've downloaded the cheat sheet, you will be able to easily tell that we expect to see B on the screen. Let's check if that's the case. Yes, we can see the B without any extra symbols, but we can also see that the arrow of the tuner is pointing slightly to the right light flashing, and the screen of the up is now yellow, pointing to the right. This means we need to tune the string down now. So, with your thumb on the tuning key, you will need to turn your thumb towards you to slacken the string on the peg. Remember tiny movements and keep plucking the string to check what has changed on the screen until your arrow is in the middle. In case of a non-lever harp or any other instrument that you want tuned in the key of C major, you will want to have the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, G always displayed without any extra symbols. If there are any extra flats or sharps, then it means you need to correct the tuning of your harp quite a bit, as the sound that the string makes is now closer to a different note rather than the one that you want it to be. So use the PDF to check where the note shown by the tuner is and then tune it in the direction that you require. With the harp that is quite out of tune, you may need to turn the key a little bit more than normally, but always keep plucking and checking the screen frequently to see how far you've got to go. Now, if your harp has any levers, you always want to make sure that these are not pressing on the strings when you're tuning your harp. This can affect the accuracy of your tuning and possibly shorten the life of the strings. So, before you tune, check that the strings are vibrating on their full length. In case of this harp, this means putting the levers down. If your harp is, like mine, fully levered, meaning it has a sharping lever on each string, the two most popular ways of tuning such instrument is either in the key of E flat major or in the key of C major. This is something that can be changed, so don't worry too much if you tune it one way and then it turns out that you have to change it. Usually it will only mean changing the tuning of a few strings, not the whole harp anymore. For the harps which only have levers on some strings, you also have a few options. For harps which have levers on strings F and C, I would suggest that you tune in the key of C major. For instruments which have levers on strings F, C and B, I would suggest that you go for the key of F major. You will find the guide to tuning your harp in all these combinations in the downloadable PDF. If you're going to tune your lever harp in the key of C major, after you've made sure that the levers are not pressing on the strings, you're going to follow the exact same steps as we did before for the adventurer harp. So you're going to look at the display of the screen of your tuner and you will want to see all the notes displayed without any extra flats or sharps. If you're going to tune your harp in the key of E flat major, you're going to pay more attention to all the strings E, A and B. After you've made sure the levers are not pressing on the strings, when you tune each of these three notes, they will be displaying some additional symbols or a slightly altered name. Let's have a look at the A above the middle C. When I plug this A now, my tuning app will show A with a little flat symbol. It looks like a small letter B here. My tuner, on the other hand, is now showing not A but G with a sharp symbol, what looks like a hash here. Despite showing something very different, both notes are correct and are in fact referring to the same pitch, because G sharp and A flat on the harp will sound the same. So this is just to let you know that in case of these strings, you may sometimes see two different names and they will both work. So for A, you can either see A with a flat or G with a sharp. For B, you will see either B with a flat or A with a sharp. And for E, you will see either E with a flat or, have you guessed it? D with a sharp. All other strings are displayed with no extra symbols, just under the name that you know them already. So C will remain a C, F will remain an F, and so on. When you download the PDF guide, you will see that it's all very clearly marked, so you remember what you can expect to see with each string. With a double action pedal harp like this one, which is one of the most popular pedal harps with 7 pedals and 3 positions available for each, usually there is one way to tune it. That is tuning in the key of C flat major. This may sound scary, but what it basically means is that for each of the strings you tune, you may expect to see 1 or 2 different names, and sometimes the letter that you see that does not exactly match the name of the string as you know it. You will see what I mean in a minute. Before you start, make sure that all your pedals are up, so the tuning pins are not pressing on the strings. Then, if we begin with a C and plug this high C, you will likely see on the screen B without any symbols. This is because with the pedal up, this C string gives us the pitch of C flat, and on the harp, C flat and B natural are the same sound. So if you're tuning a pedal harp and when tuning C you see B on the screen, don't panic, that's exactly what you should get. Then, for strings B and A, you can expect to see one of two different names. If you watched me tune a lever harp in the key of E flat major, this will be the same. When I tune A, we will likely see either A flat, like on the app, or G sharp, like on the tuner. With B, on both these devices you happen to see B flat, but another name that you could see would be A sharp. Now, when we carry on with the string G, you will most likely see F sharp on the screen, but another option could also be G flat, and this is also correct. The Fs are going to be interesting because here you will see E without any symbols. This is because this string with a pedal up is actually F flat, and F flat on the harp is the same pitch and sound as E natural. Then we've got D, which can come up as D flat or C sharp. And finally, back on C, and as you remember, this will usually appear as B natural, so no other symbols. Now for the promised tips and tricks. One of the most common mistakes made by beginners is tuning the wrong string. This can happen if you're plucking one string while your tuning key is attached to a tuning peg that belongs to a different one. If you keep turning the key, thinking you still have a lot to go, you may eventually break the string, and that's something you definitely want to avoid. A tip to make finding the right peg easier is to put your thumb next to the top end of the string you're going to tune on the peg so you can see it, and then put your index finger on the other side of the peg. Then, when you put your tuning key on the peg, you should feel it with your index finger. If you don't, that means your tuning key is not where it should be. To get the right feel of this at the beginning, you will likely need to put your fingers on first and then keep looking back and forth to check that your thumb and second finger are on the same peg, but they will quickly get used to that. And if you're like me, not a very tall person and cannot see your pegs easily from above, you will really appreciate this. Whenever you find yourself in a situation where you're turning your key and the arrows on the display stay around the same place, check whether you're moving the right peg. It can save you a lot of nerves. To sum up, tuning the harp may look complicated at first, but bear in mind that in this video I have shown you a few different instruments and that for some of them there may be more than one way of tuning. For your harp, you will need to choose just one and stick to that. So you will only need to know the 7 notes because the 7 letters keep repeating, and then what letters or symbols to expect for each of these strings. When you download the free PDF guide that I'm sharing in the description of this video, you can even cut out the part that applies to your harp so you're not distracted by the other beats. And then you can place that little snippet on your music stand. Learning to tune the harp takes some practice, and it may be that you will make some mistakes on the way. It happens even to me that sometimes I start turning the key on the wrong string, but with time and experience you will soon feel more at ease, and even if you happen to make a mistake, you will be able to spot it and correct quickly. As with everything, the most important thing is to give yourself an opportunity to practice tuning. So, especially at the beginning, I would encourage you to try and tune your harp either every day or every time you practice. Even if at the beginning it feels like it takes a lot of extra time, I promise it will pay off. Now, I'm curious to hear from you. How do you find tuning? Have you got any questions, or are you not sure how to tune your harp? Do let me know in the comments. Also, make sure to subscribe to Coffee Break Harp so you can get notified of future videos. I will see you here next week. Take care, bye for now!